It is in the moon of the ripening choke cherries. Thousands of Sioux and Cheyenne have gathered along the Little Bighorn River, which they call Greasy Grass. 15 miles to the east, beyond the bluffs, are 700 white soldiers. They've come from Fort Abraham Lincoln, Dakota Territory, to force the Indians back onto their reservations. They expect to find 800 Indians, no more. The bluffs prevent them from seeing one of the largest groups of Indians ever assembled in North America. Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer and his 7th Cavalry hurry down toward the valley. They fear the Indians will scatter into the hills and disappear. But the Indians have no intention of running this time. Custer splits his command. Captain Benteen marches to the left to preclude any threat of Indians from the south. Major Reno is ordered forward to attack the unseen village. Custer holds back, promising support. Crossing the river, Reno charges. Then suddenly halts. Reno orders his men to dismount. Where's Custer? Some of the men say he was watching them from atop the bluffs, but has turned away. Reno moves to tall cottonwood trees, and the fighting becomes intense. Reno is splattered with blood. He heads for the bluffs across the river. Left behind are wounded and dead. At the ford, there is utter confusion. The braves chase the soldiers as though they were buffalo. One-third of Reno's men have now been lost. It's Reno's first taste of fighting Indians, and he'll never outlive the controversy that surrounds this move to the bluffs. Reno was one of the first to the top. The others straggle up. Suddenly, the Indians stop their attack and ride north, disappearing from sight. Benteen's group arrives minutes later. He'd received a hasty message from Custer. Benteen, come on. Big village. Be quick. Bring packs. Custer's somewhere to the north, but hills hide the view. A reluctant effort is made to locate him. But the Indians swarm back, and the 350 men cluster together and, surrounded, fight until twilight. At dawn, the battle resumes. Toward evening, the Indians leave. The Battle of the Little Bighorn in Montana Territory is over. For Sitting Bull, Gall, Crazy Horse, Two Moon, and their people, it's been a great, if fleeting, victory. In Philadelphia, a grand, once-in-a-lifetime celebration was taking place. Bicentennial Exposition, 500 acres of fantastic exhibits marking the 100th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Speeches proclaimed a century of freedom, independence, and progress. Then, like a clap of thunder, came the news. Custer dead in the wilds of Montana? Not since Lincoln's assassination had there been such profound shock. Attempts to dominate other people, their land and goods, can be done out of simple greed. But for those we call civilized people, such struggle often must be ennobled with high purpose. Europe had been rescued from the infidels, so now must North America. When the United States was established, the government thus asserted a tradition centuries old, cultural capitulation. Inclusion would be accorded only those who accepted European ideals. The Cherokee were able to adapt. They devised a written form for their language, taught people to read, printed newspapers, established a public school system. They welcomed missionaries and developed an agricultural economy. They also acquired black slaves. But whites soon coveted their land. Georgia declared them aliens and pushed them out onto the Great Plains. The melting pot theory was not to apply to the red man, no matter how amenable to European ways. Instead, Indian land would be a land apart. As late as 1832, this meant land west of the Mississippi, popularly held to be the ancient and natural home of the American Aborigine. The belief that only valueless deserts stretched across to the Rocky Mountains encouraged this notion. Yet in 1541, Coronado had found a few Indians here. Those he did see were impoverished farmers. The bison flourished, but horses were unknown, and hunting on foot, the natives couldn't catch enough bison to enrich their frugal existence. Then, about 1730, these Indians got their first horses, probably descendants of those which carried the Spanish explorers. This caused an overnight revolution. Nomadic hunting became immensely profitable. The powerful could now afford the luxury of waste. Word spread. Indians came from all directions and in great numbers. At the same time, whites back east crept ever westward, pushing the Indians in front of them. Pushed by the whites, pulled by the horse, what was formed was the remarkable amalgam known as the Plains Indian. Consolidated about 1800, it was extraordinary in uniting with great speed one of the most diverse collections of people on earth. The increased mobility made possible by the horse and the addition of another white import, the rifle, provoked new trouble. Indian fought Indian. Peace faded. Warfare became a central part of the Plains culture. The powerful Sioux Nation, core of the Plains Indians, made many enemies. With the Cheyenne, one of their few allies, they fought the Crow, owners of fine horses. Custer's top scouts would be Crow Indians, anxious to get their land back. Meanwhile, towns with Indian names like Omaha and Chicago were becoming white beehives. In 1841, a wagon train of settlers passed through the heart of the Sioux hunting grounds, opening up the Oregon Trail. Whites began to farm the fertile land on the far side of the great American desert. In 1849, gold seekers rushed to California. By 1850, agencies and forts, ostensibly to protect each side from the other, dotted the plains. The Indian hunting ground was being split in two, the buffalo migrating north and south. The Indians followed. In 1855, in council, the Sioux decided to resist further white encroachment. Their one consistent policy from that summer until their final defeat over 2 decades later. Minor uprisings followed. By the end of the Civil War, the southern hunting ground was being overrun by whites. In a remarkable winter march of more than 400 miles, the southern tribes joined the northern. Eastern whites felt the threat. President Ulysses S. Grant attempted to implement a peace policy. Many Quakers volunteered, believing it the white man's obligation to civilize Indians through kindness, peaceful persuasion, and education. Some whites thought this strategy naive and foolish. Reds considered it evidence of white weakness. At the same time, there was a surfeit of Civil War veterans. These were sent west, and new forts were built. But not much formal fighting took place. A few thousand deaths resulted from bullets and arrows. 3 years after the Civil War, the government had made 400 treaties with the Indians. Each had been broken by both sides. In 1868, another treaty was negotiated. In exchange for a cessation of Indian hostilities, which were critically interfering with the building of the railroad, the whites offered to cede an area sacred to the Sioux, the Bahasapa, or Black Hills. This area was the center of the Sioux world, home of the Great Spirit, mother of life. 100 years earlier, it had been Kiowa territory, but the Sioux had driven them and other tribes out. Red Cloud, greatest leader of the Indian moderates, signed the treaty. Sitting Bull did not. A strong advocate for preservation of the Indian way of life, he broke irrevocably with Red Cloud, and he and his followers left the reservations permanently. Red Cloud remained. Rumors of gold in the Black Hills had persisted for years. In July 1874, the 7th Cavalry leaves Fort Lincoln to investigate. If there is gold, the government will try to buy the area to avoid further bloodshed. The expedition is led by George Custer, and the Sioux look on angrily, but they do nothing. When gold is found, the Commissioner of Indian Affairs tries to downplay it, but the newspapers rhapsodize, and gold seekers, like summer locusts, gather. Attempts by the military to turn them back are futile. Meanwhile, trouble has developed on the reservations. Red Cloud's followers are starving, and for the first time, many consider joining Sitting Bull and his hostiles. The Indian agents are among those responsible. They intercept supplies meant for the Indians and sell them to the post traders. Their official salary is $1,500, but many are making $15,000. The post traders, in turn, sell these goods at excessive prices to the soldiers and get by with it because the War Department requires its military to buy from them. Both whites and Indians are thus defrauded. This is political gold to the Democrats. Angered at Grant's humane policy toward the Indians, among other things, they now demand an investigation into suspected corruption in his War Department. The Secretary of War, William Belknap, is accused by the New York Herald of farming out trader ships. The attack is based on leaked classified information. The informant is Custer. Custer is incensed at the exploitation of both his men and the Indians. Grant's scandals widen as his brother Orville becomes implicated. The government now abandons its peace policy. The question of the Black Hills is the excuse for both sides to end the uncertain 7-year truce. The hostiles are notified to return to the reservations. They do not. Troops prepare to march against them. Custer is given command of the Dakota column, then is called to Washington. Before a congressional committee, he gives evidence damning to Secretary Belknap and Orville Grant. The president is furious. Custer returns by rail to Bismarck. Here he discovers he has been replaced as commander by order of the president. Moreover, he's forbidden to accompany the expedition. Bismarck is thriving. Thanks to the 1868 treaty, the Northern Pacific is stalled here. Gamblers, hoodlums, ladies of the evening pour in to reel under the effects of a blinding whiskey made just outside town. Enlisted men surge from train to ferry and across the Missouri River to Fort Lincoln on the far bank. All are volunteers since military conscription has ended. They range from romantic young men lured by the western frontier to petty criminals escaping eastern prisons. Many are illiterate. Many are European immigrants. Most are poor. They dislike most all the officers. Custer they call hard ass. The officers, too, are a motley crew. Captain Frederick Benteen dislikes his fellow officers, especially the young Custer. Major Marcus Reno also dislikes Custer. He had requested command of the coming campaign, but the request had been denied. Benteen and Reno, unfriendly at other times, make common cause in their dislike for Custer. But the Custers get along famously. Libby and George are rarely separated. Custer is a peculiar genius, lucky, brutally ambitious, tireless. His friends are devoted, his public adoring, his enemies implacable. Custer's entire career may now be in jeopardy. He begs General Terry, the new commander and a novice in Indian warfare, to intercede for him. Public pressure mounts. Grant relents. Custer will go in a minor capacity as commander of the 7th Cavalry. Sitting Bull has been one of the greatest instruments in unifying the Northern Plains Indians against the whites. Now, at 42, he is no longer a warrior chief of the Umpapa Sioux. He is spiritual leader. On the greasy grass, others will be warrior chiefs. In combat, every warrior is on his own. A chief will be followed depending on how great his warriors deem his medicine to be that day. Two Moon, short, dark chief of the Cheyenne, will have strong medicine. So will Gall, adopted brother of Sitting Bull, a muscular Sioux warrior chief of 36. He will be largely responsible for the great victory now only months away. So too will Crazy Horse, a leader of the Ogallala Sioux, who was never photographed, a mystic, revered and feared by all. Life for the Indian is much like that of the buffalo, who spends most of the year scattered across the plains in small herds, then in summer gathers together. This is the only time for both to do so, as each requires enormous amounts of food and water, too difficult to obtain at other times. This spring, more Indians than ever before have left the reservations. Most have heard of the orders to return, but they know the Great White Father often talks into the wind. Moreover, Sitting Bull has never signed a treaty, and Red Cloud's treaty gives them the right to be here. About 2 weeks before the battle, Sitting Bull attempts to have a vision. From each arm, 50 patches of skin are removed. For 18 hours, he dances, staring constantly into the sun, blood running down each arm, singing his appeal to the everywhere spirit. Finally, the voice says, "I give you these because they have no ears." Then he sees soldiers falling upside down in a camp. He interprets this to mean there will be a battle, won by the Sioux. Libby Custer has also had a disturbing vision. A warrior holding her husband's scalp aloft. People attempt to quiet her growing fears. Lieutenant Varnum uses the horse clippers to make Custer's long hair less worth the taking. Libby forgets about her dream, until one day she becomes strangely agitated. It is Sunday, the 25th of June. Friends say not to worry. Many of the Indians with Sitting Bull sense this to be the last time they will be able to hunt and sing and worship together as before. From the east, other Indians are coming. Crow and Arikara scouts are guiding the soldiers from Fort Lincoln. These soldiers are the instrument of many interests. Railroad investors, farmers, miners, cattlemen, land speculators, whiskey dealers. They represent an historical force of immense magnitude. They're not at war, either legally or officially. They are simply enforcing a directive, an ultimatum, made by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. Militarily, the Battle of the Little Bighorn in present-day Montana was insignificant. Yet it has become a legend, perhaps the most controversial in our history. Certain mysteries will never be solved. Why did Reno halt when Custer's orders left him no such discretion? Why didn't Benteen reunite with Custer as ordered? And what about the dashing man of iron and ambition? Why did Custer not establish the position and strength of the enemy before attacking? Why did he split his command so widely they couldn't be easily reassembled? Why didn't he support Reno? Most agreed that after leaving Reno, Custer rode northward along the bluffs and up to the crest where he first glimpsed the huge village. He sent his message to Benteen. Then he hastened on toward Medicine Tail Coulee, his first opportunity to descend the bluffs to the river. Many Indians say Custer was shot here at the ford. The first to be hit, his soldiers pulled him out of the water and retreated. Gall, who led a part of this attack, insisted he was stopped half a mile from the river. Some think that if Custer had crossed the river and charged the village, he might well have split the camp and carried the day. But Custer is forced north. His troops are under successive assaults from the rear. Ahead, Crazy Horse and the Cheyennes are sweeping around in a great arc. Caught here between Gall and Crazy Horse, the whites make their last stand. About this brief moment in history, more has been carved, printed, painted, drawn, molded, and written than any other American battle. Its appeal is worldwide. This victory on the Little Bighorn, greatest in the 400-year-old struggle to preserve their Indian way of life, will now hasten their defeat. The Black Hills are taken without payment or regard of the 1868 treaty. Reservation Indians are treated as prisoners of war. Hostiles are shot on sight. Crazy Horse is killed. Sitting Bull is killed. Mark Twain sarcastically proposes that the remaining red men be educated to death. Sure enough, Indian children are taken from their parents, given white names, white clothes, and a white education at red schools. But the Indian is not assimilated. His values are too strong. To be equal, we need not be the same. Today, can't we all, red and white, become as large as our sky?